Well, ready or not, here I come. Probably most of us of a certain age remember shouting that at the top of our lungs on the playground or at home, playing hide and seek as children. Some were better at it than others. The scriptures today speak of readiness, about being ready. I'll come back to that call, ready or not, here I come, in a moment. But the scriptures today speak about being ready. The book of wisdom speaking of the night of Passover as the Israelites awaited the deliverance promised them. The letter to the Hebrews speaking of faith as the realization or the fulfillment of what is hoped for, speaking to us about our longing for the things of God and our trust that God will do what he promises. And the gospel parable today speaks of servants ready for their master and those not ready for their master. All of this, I think, speaks of an eagerness and a hunger for God. This includes not being just willing, but eager to do God's will. God, in some respects, says to us, ready or not, here I come. But we too might say it of ourselves, that whether we're ready, we present ourselves. And so I'd like to speak tonight about how we are eager for God or not, and willing and ready to encounter him when we meet him or not, especially here in the liturgy, as we come to Mass not only to receive the Lord, both in his word and in his flesh and blood in the Eucharist, but our coming eagerly to give something, to serve, to worship, to offer ourselves. And if we're not ready as we come, our ability to do all those things is hindered. We certainly speak in the teaching of the church traditionally about the obligation to attend Sunday Mass. But we need to also think about Mass as our privilege, as our delight, as we come to rejoice, to delight, as we come in wonder, as we come with a sense of amazement, as we meet the Lord who has everything to offer us. If we come to Mass only to fulfill a duty or obligation, merely to check a box to say that we did it, that can't be sustained. Something more is necessary if we're really to appreciate and to be built up in the gifts that the Lord desires to share with us here. In short, we have to be ready as we come to meet the Lord, as we come to give of ourselves in worship. This spring, Pope Francis wrote an apostolic letter to the church entitled Desiderio Desideravi. I had to practice saying that. It's a tongue twister in Latin, which is taken from the phrase, I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. Jesus' words in the Gospel of John. The letter is on liturgical formation and the people of God. I've not even gotten all the way through it myself, but there's a great richness in what he has to say. And he speaks about our sense of amazement before the Paschal Mystery, and he's really citing Pope John Paul II in his final apostolic letter in 2004, I think that was, as he spoke about our sense of amazement and wonder before the Lord. Pope Francis says that this amazement before the mystery is an essential part of what we do in the liturgy. We would miss something if we come without hearts ready to meet the Lord. Pope Francis says if there were lacking our astonishment at the fact that the Paschal Mystery is rendered present in the sacraments, we would risk being impermeable to the ocean of grace that floods every celebration. Our lack of wonder, our lack of not only reverence, but our sense of awe and amazement at what the Lord does, if we come without that, then we risk cutting ourselves off and becoming impenetrable and unable to receive the gifts of God's grace. There are certainly always efforts to make sure that the liturgy itself touches our hearts so that we can experience in an interior sense what is going on in the liturgy. Pope Francis goes on, says, the encounter with God is not the fruit simply of an interior searching for him on an individual basis, but it is an event that takes place by God. We can encounter God, he says, through the fact of the incarnation that reaches us in the Last Supper, to the extreme point of his desiring to share his flesh with us. And he's not simply speaking about, he says, this sense of mystery that some criticize, that somehow we're losing something. Rather, on the contrary, we marvel at the fact, at the plan of God that has been revealed in Jesus, and the power that reaches us here in the liturgy. Beauty, just like truth, he says, engenders wonder. And when these are referred to the mystery of God, they lead us to wonder, to amazement, and adoration. He says wonder is an essential part of the liturgical act because it's the way that those who know they are engaged in the symbolic gestures look at things. It is the marveling of those who experience the power of our signs and symbols, which does not consist in referring to some abstract concept, but rather in the very concreteness and the ability for us to experience such signs. So this is what we're to be about. There are lots of things we do that we know are for our good, but we might not always like to do. Sometimes we might approach the liturgy. We know we have to come to Mass. We should come to Mass. But we should also prepare. There are things that we know that are for our good that we don't like to do. Going to the doctor, perhaps eating healthy might not be something that we really want to do, but we know we should do. Exercise. There are plenty of days that I don't feel like it. Plenty of days that I don't want to head out on the long run. This morning I had to really talk myself into going out to meet my training group. And part of my going was the guilt in knowing that if I didn't go, somebody would email me or text me and say, "Where were you?" That's part of the gift of the accountability that comes with training in a group. But there are even days for us that living our vocation might seem difficult, that doing the work or the career that we choose might on certain days feel burdensome. But we know in order to sustain those things, we have to find the joy in it. And that's the nature of living a vocation, where our deepest desires and joys meet God's deepest needs. Our prayer and our worship cannot be reduced to a mere chore or a task that we check off. The servants that we meet in the gospel today, they served out of obligation, out of loyalty, but they were rewarded because Jesus says the master will put on the apron and proceed to wait on them. And that loyalty then leads to devotion and to love. We ourselves are more than servants. We are called disciples. The Lord calls us friends. Our prayer and our worship may begin in obligation at some point, but it fosters devotion and love to the point that we desire to be with the Lord in prayer. And here's the truth at the end of the day. I find that I am my best self as a person, as a disciple, and as a priest when I'm in prayer, especially when I'm celebrating the Mass, because it's here, it's in moments of prayer that my relationship with Jesus is in its best place. He shares his love and his life with me, and I am open, receptive, and grateful, and express that in my prayer and my worship. It's when I walk away from prayer, it's outside the liturgy, where things get more difficult. Seeing us as our best selves when we worship, because we have that right stance before the Lord, is really the goal. This is how it is that we say we are ready. Here I come, Lord. I come to do your will. I come to hear your word. I come to receive your gifts and to be built up in love so that I can be the best self that you call me to be, Lord. I look forward to sharing more about Pope Francis' apostolic letter And as the church in the United States enters this multi-year process that they're entitling a Eucharistic revival, I look forward to reflecting more frequently on how we can make the most of our participation at Mass and cherish and really come with a sense of wonder and amazement before this gift of God here in the Eucharist. And so for today, I leave you with a few more of Pope Francis' words. He says, "From Sunday to Sunday, communion in the body and blood of Christ wants to make also of our lives a sacrifice pleasing to the Father. From Sunday to Sunday, the energy of the bread broken sustains us in announcing the gospel, in which the authenticity of our celebration shows itself. So let us continue to be astonished at the beauty of what we encounter here in the liturgy. This mystery has been given to us. Let us allow ourselves to be embraced by the desire that the Lord continues to have to eat his Passover with us." Amen.